There we go. Okay, so as I said, everyone will be logging in to get to the compensation system through the people portal, and clergy are familiar with this already, but it'll be somewhat new for laypersons to familiarize themselves with. So the URL that you will get familiar with is holston.org/people portal. And you're going to be getting emails. I'm gonna send it out to everyone who is either PPR chair or treasurer. And you can pass the information on if you need someone else at your church to create a people portal login. But the easiest thing to do for that is to go to the sign in help page, which is also this link down here, need help logging in. But this is the link I'm going to be sending out to everyone that just says, put your email address in here and create your login. So that's how lay people will create their logins. The only caveat to that is that it needs to be the email address that we have on file for you through your church officers and leaders form that was submitted at your charge conference, okay? Because those are the email addresses that we have on file. If you need to change an email address, if you can't set up your login, that will be because we don't have that email address, okay? So you'll want to check with your district office to make sure that they have the right email address in our database for you, okay? So just a couple of URLs I wanted everybody to be familiar with. And again, I will be sending emails out to all those people that are involved in the process of approving what you've all known as the pastor support worksheet. This is basically replacing that now. So, okay. Then another thing that I'm making sure everybody is familiar with, since usually the pastor support worksheet process is done at charge conference, we're just utilizing that forms area for you to keep up to date on what's happening in terms of information about the compensation system, okay? So we're going to be adding more information here. I'll be putting those links in that I just showed you so that everybody knows that knows how to create a login. But we're also working on a new version of the PSW. You have the January version here linked on this page if you need to use it to help with, because we recognize that some people may still need to, if your salary recording is complicated, you may want to still use a worksheet. So we're still going to have that available, but it's going to look a little bit different. So I wanted you to kind of get a look at that as well. We haven't quite finalized this yet. I'm working with Knox Wimberly. You all might remember that he did a video for us last year on the pastor support worksheet. But we're working on this new version of the pastor support worksheet for July and going forward that you'll be able to use. And we've been able to use up more of the space for more information that might be helpful. This minimum salary for information, for instance, was at the bottom of the page. And you'll see as we go through, if you're not already familiar with this, how that information is tied into your percent of time and status, and that these are the minimums that will have to appear on this line over here with the totals, okay, for salary. We've broken this line out in a separate area because these two lines, these two places where you can put items like sustentation or other funding for someone's salary, we've broken those out here because they are a separate field in the compensation system also. We need to track those separately, different than we were doing in the past where we were putting them all on this top line here before, okay? So again, this doesn't have any signature fields on it or anything. We just want to make sure you still have a version of this worksheet available, and we will put this updated one on that 4B charge conference form page that I just showed you. It will be available there once we get it finalized. So just giving you some inside info as we head forward here. And now we'll go back into logging into the compensation system. Okay, so I wanted you to, we can show you now how to get into what the login will, how it will work when you're logging in. And let's see. Make sure I'm putting the right fake password in there. Okay, so when you go to log in, you're going to see this menu over here. This is typically everything that a clergy person would see, but you'll see some of these items appearing in your view, depending on what your position is at your church. But the compensation menu item is where you'll go to begin entering your clergy person's salary and benefits information. And depending on how many people you have at your church, pastors you have, they'll all be listed here, okay? So I just wanted you to kind of get a feel for what this screen will look like when you come in, and depending on what person you're working on, their name will appear here and the name of the church. And you'll just start here by clicking on one of these, okay? So we've got, let's see which one this is. All right, so that takes us into the form. And we've, another nice thing of us converting this to all online is we can put all kinds of instructions in here for you that kind of appear in these blue boxes as you go through the page, okay? And again, we'll fine tune this depending on the kinds of questions we're getting from people. We'll add more information as needed. But you've got a lot of instructions here that kind of help you know how you're walking through. If anything pops up in red when you hit a save button, then you need to go back and look at it and figure out what other information is needed there. Something might be missing, and that happens in a couple of different areas in the form depending on which screen you're working in. So this is the first screen. The district offices have all been trained on this system, though of course they're still kind of learning a little bit about it. But if you can't reach them or aren't able to get assistance with them, you can email me and I can work on that with you. I'll probably send you a Zoom link because that's usually the easiest way to show someone around the system, okay? This is where we're going to have that link to the worksheet I just showed you, the new pastor support worksheet that will help you to enter the data here. If you, again, because there's some fields that just need some math, and if it's easier to use a worksheet, then you'll have your totals already to refer to. This is something we're adding because Julie Graham, our benefits officer, she'd indicated this is probably helpful for you all to, again, have more of an understanding of based on full-time, three-quarter time, half-time, and statuses, clergy statuses over here. Again, what the minimum salaries are, and then also which benefits those persons are eligible for. So it's kind of a guide that can help you to understand some of that. So we put that link in there as well for you. And then once we finalize the tutorial videos, you'll see one of those here. We're going to have the first thing I'm going to show you in the form is just a basic streamlined single point charge. The church pays everything. Okay, we'll look at that first. That's the simplest part of the process, and then we'll go back and look at another church scenario or charge scenario where there's more than one church. So let's see. I actually have a couple of these already started. I'm going to pull one of those up so you don't have to watch me type. There we go. Okay, so here's an example. Again, clergy status on July 1st is very important that is what goes on this line if you do have a new clergy person being appointed to your church on July 1. So be sure you've got the correct status for July 1. Some of them have had a status change at annual conference. And so we want to be sure that is up to date on July 1. A nice thing about, again, doing these online is as far as entering things into fields, you only need to type the first couple letters of whatever you're searching for. You don't have to scroll through miles and miles of drop-down menus. You can just begin typing and you should be able to find what you're looking for, okay? So here's an example from Appalachian District and last 4 digits. The effective start and end dates will already be in here. You don't want to mess with those, okay? Because it actually won't work if you change those dates, okay? We've got the same fields that you're familiar with from the pastor support worksheet, where if you have gone back to make a change, we want to know that you've done that and what date you did that on. So we've got fields for that so that we can keep track of that. So here's the Colonial Heights charge. Again, you find these by just typing the first couple letters, okay? And should be able to pull in whatever charge you're looking for, as well as the same thing with pulling up the church.
Donna, I have a question.
Sure.
So we do, when you go into the churches to pull those up, it's not limiting what you see by district, is it? So they'll have to be very mindful because there's so many churches with the same names.
Yes.
Pick the correct one. Okay.
Yes, good point. And we'll be checking those over. You guys will get to see it and we'll get to see it at the conference office before everything's finalized. So good question. All right. This is a little bit different here. I'm going to highlight this and we're going to look at it in the next scenario where we talk about something that's not just a streamlined church is paying everything scenario. But this is important for you to know that the selection options here are Z Holston Conf. So same idea, Z dash, and you'll be able to pull that in if you need to. If you're going to have something that is equitable comp, sustentation, or one of those other funding sources from the conference. Okay. All right. So here's some basic salary info I've put into this just random form. Again, these are fields you're familiar with from the pastor support worksheet. We're going to reference them. Also, if you've used the worksheet, you'll see which line these are referenced from. Okay. You see these notations here. We've put lots of areas throughout the form for note taking or extra info that is going to help us understand if you have an unusual scenario of this church is paying that, this church is paying that kind of thing. You'll be able to make those selections again later. You'll see when we get splits information and split screen up. But it is helpful that we've got a lot of places for you to explain any kind of notes that will be helpful about the salary arrangements. Okay, again, the one-time moving expense info is available. All lines from the pastor support worksheet. I put a continuing ad amount there. You'll see that this line, the nice thing about the form too, it is automatically doing some math for you. So if we're also going to add some funding for annual conference, then you'll see that total up, whoops. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Clicked on something I shouldn't have. Okay. You'll see that total updates there. All right. And then this is just, we've just highlighted this to remind you that it's related to that question that was above where I had you put Z Holston Conference. If you have something like equitable comp or sustentation, be sure to hit yes. There's areas throughout the form where when you hit a yes, something else will open up. So if you are using a source like equitable comp, you'll click that yes and be able to put the dollar amounts in these fields. And you can put any explanations here also if you need to explain what the situation is. Okay. And again, we're going to look at that a little bit more later. This is back to just, this is a streamlined single point charge where the church is paying everything. So I put a cash housing amount here. Again, if the pastor lives in a parsonage, do not put an amount on the cash housing line, okay? We don't want to duplicate housing amounts. So be sure that if you've clicked yes, that cash housing is a 0. And that this amount will update when we hit save with the pastor button pushed. Let me go ahead and go do that. And I'm going to show you another nice trick that I like about having, we already have an error. The search in the web browser, if you didn't know this, it's really handy on almost any website. Command F or Control F, depending on what kind of system you're using. We can jump right back down to where we were. Okay, you don't have to go scrolling and figure out where you last ended up. All right. And what I wanted to do there was hit save. And okay. Oops, something is not happening right there. Go back out. I know that our cloud database folks were having some issues yesterday on their server, so hopefully they're not going to mess up our training session here with more problems. Let's see. Does pastor live in parsonage? Okay. Oh yeah, so we change it to yes. We have the parsonage allowance amount there. And the calculation comes up to 75%. So this is a someone who's a full connection. That means that we're not meeting that minimum salary requirement. If you look back at this form here, let's see, FE 48. We've added this blue box here also, so you're aware that if someone's calculation of their service time, or if their service time is changing, and they're supposed to be full connection, and they're not going to continue to serve at full time, we've got these forms that are downloadable from the conference secretary's office, and as I understand it, they're going to need to be used every year whenever there's compensation changes. So keep that in mind, that these forms are here if you're going to change to go less than full time, or returning to full time, or continuing at less than full time if you are one of those clergy status categories that is full time. Okay, we've got instructions here on proceeding with insurance. Also important to know that selecting it here does not enroll you. So we've got all the information here about completing the form that needs to be turned in if you haven't been enrolled in the insurance program yet. And then you can also go to this webpage here for all the information about the health insurance options. Okay. You're logging into the Employee Navigator. That's where you do your insurance selections for clergy, just so you're aware of that. But you'll want to make sure you match those up here to whatever you chose in the Employee Navigator from these drop downs. They're all listed here, all your options. And then it's doing your calculations for you about what is automatically, the church's share of the health insurance premium, and then the personal share. You've got your fields just like you did before on the PSW for other savings accounts. Okay. And then compensation used for pension. These totals are automatically happening as you go down the page. We do have this button here for pension waiver. Right now, it's just going to alert us that you believe you have a waiver on file, and we're going to need to confirm that, just so you know. It doesn't change the calculations on the page right now. Okay. Okay. Julie Graham, are you here yet? Have you seen Julie come in, Beverly?
Yeah, I'm here. I've been here.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. I don't know if you want to talk, explain any or anything I've just kind of gone over so far. Is there anything you want to pipe in about the benefits areas here?
Well, I have a question. When you said clicking the pension waiver doesn't change the amount, it will though, right? It'll change the direct bill amount eventually. If they signed a waiver, then they want, okay.
Yeah, we'll need to confirm if they've checked this box. What I was saying is we'll need to confirm it. Right now, it's not removing it from this line.
Okay.
So we'll need to confirm it if they've checked yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty. And yeah, so if you recall for, we've always recommended a 3% minimum contribution to UMPIP. The reason we're changing it to 4% this year is because Westpath would have presented, if General Conference had not gotten canceled, they've had a new plan in the works called the Compass Plan for several years now, but because General Conference got delayed, it hasn't gone to the floor to be voted on. If it passes, if the Compass Plan passes in April at General Conference, in order for the clergy person to take the most advantage of the benefits offered from that plan, they would need to contribute 4% of their UMPIP. They don't have to, but if they want to take full advantage of what's offered, they would need to do a 4% minimum. So the Board of Pensions just thought it would be wise to go ahead now and introduce the 4% option so that people can be used to that, you know, ahead of time. But that's what it will change to from here on out, is a recommendation of a minimum of 4%. And Westpath will be doing a lot of training on the Compass Plan. So just read those emails that you get from them about webinars and things coming up, and because it won't go into effect till 2026. We've got a while, but it's worth it to be reading about it and thinking about it. Oh, and the other things that we changed, I think, did we put Roth in there, Donna?
Yeah, I haven't gotten down to that
Okay.
area yet, but we do have after-tax options also that you can indicate you're planning on using now. So we've got the UMPIP, which you're used to seeing on the PSW, and then all the after-tax options are below here. And again, the same thing applies. Don't put a percent and a dollar amount. It's only either or, either a percentage. And these after-tax things, I'm sure they don't, the percentage is random. It's not, this is where we're recommending the 4%, right, Julie? But these other ones.
I would need to check on that. I'm not sure. It's all new to me too, but I don't know if it's 4% total after and pre-tax, or, but
Okay.
that's a good question.
We'll find that out, and we'll have that information for you here about what is the recommended minimum percent, at least for UMPIP. But
We've
then
got-
you also have
Go ahead.
the Roth options here. Okay. So I've thrown some numbers in here. I've got the UMPIP amount here and then also a Roth amount for another $100 a month. And then it's doing the calculations for us.
Donna,
What-
there's a question in the chat about health insurance.
Okay,
It says, I am the business administrator at my church. I would not be enrolling the pastor in healthcare. That would be up to the pastor. So those links at the health insurance section won't really be applicable to persons in my role. So the way that the pastor always enrolls themselves, and they are supposed to communicate with their business administrator and tell their business administrator or their bookkeeper or their treasurer what they have selected. We do have confirmation statements that I send out electronically to the pastors. I put them in the direct billing that goes for the people that get their bills in the mail. You'll get a confirmation sheet for your church after open enrollment each year that tells you what everybody in your church signed up for. But the communication between the treasurer, bookkeeper, business administrator, and the pastor, that's you all have got to communicate with each other, because I don't have a way of linking, especially with lay employees, I don't have a way of linking who they need to talk to. Is it the child care director? So just that is because not at this time of year, but when everybody fills out a PSW, the process is flawed, and unfortunately we can't fix it. Pastor support worksheets need to be filled out in September. Open enrollment doesn't happen until November. So people pick things, they put things on their pastor support worksheet in September, and then they might change their mind in November. So since we've gone to the online health insurance enrollment, we have a lot more tools available. You can go to your pastor and say, print out your summary, your benefits summary. They can do that. They can go into Employee Navigator, they can print a piece of paper that shows you exactly what they signed up for, and then you go to the rate sheet and go into the PSW, go into the rate sheet and pick the right things. The PSW will calculate it for you. We know it's a flawed process, but can't figure out a way to change the timeline. So
There
Yeah.
are 2 questions under the question and answer section. I'm not sure what area they are talking about, but they asked, will the end date reflect the end of June 2025? And what is the current match being provided by Westpath?
Our salary is always January to December unless someone gets an appointment in July. And you may have seen this notated in instructions for the PSW in the past, and I believe we've added it here too. You will have to prorate some calculations at the end of the year for someone who may have only come in July and then ended with the salary ending in December. And that's just so that you all have the proper calculations for W-2s and that sort of thing.
And the current match for Westpath is if you contribute 1% to your UMPIP, the match is 1% into your pension plan, into your CRSP pension plan. So the match for clergy goes not back into UMPIP, but into the defined benefit plan. You have 2 plans right now, CRSP and UMPIP. But 3% is the minimum recommended for you to have enough money when you retire. And see David Tabor's face on here. As a retiree, the earlier you can start doing that, the better. Time is important. Isn't that right, David?
I would say that you need to put a minimum of 5% in to retire comfortably, if you possibly can. I mean, the 4 and 3 is fine. Mary Lynn and I put 5 and 7. And while I would like to have more money, the 5 and 7 has allowed us to retire without having worries and be comfortable in it. Just my thought process on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John. Okay, any other questions in the benefits area? And again, some of those of you who came in a little bit later, Knox Wimberly is working on some, we're gonna have specific shorter, you might remember he did a 30-minute video last year about the pastor support worksheet. And we're gonna go the route of having some shorter ones in here. So one that might be just about, you know, after-tax contributions. He'll talk about it in terms of the tax issues and that sort of thing. So we're gonna drop in some videos into video links into the form here that you'll be able to pull up if you have specific questions about areas related to producing a W-2 and that kind of thing. And that's where that takes us to the bottom of the form, where you're putting the line 13, again, the lines you're used to seeing on the pastor support worksheet. If there is a housing allowance resolution amount approved at charge conference, you'll put that in here. And it's being calculated for the W-2. So again, we're looking at a single point charge, a church that's paying for everything. No equitable comp or sustentation or anything like that from another source. And so we've got all the instructions down here about what happens next. So before you get approvals, you have to finalize split payments if there are split payments. So that would be a charge scenario, okay?
Hey, Dawn, I got a quick,
Otherwise, you click save. Sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We have made the difference a little more obvious with the cash housing allowance and the housing allowance resolution, right? On this, in this particular online form.
Well, we've got the lines for the instructions here, that this is line 13. But yeah, good question. I know we talked about that at some point. Let's see, where was that? Yeah, probably need to put, we'll be more specific on that here, that this
Yeah.
is the actual dollar amount that the pastor is receiving for cash housing versus the amount that's approved at charge conference.
At charge conference time, we use the same form, but they're two separate lines. And one, of course, being if they are offered a parsonage and living in it, and the other if there's not one and they're getting a cash amount to help them with rent, or if they own a home. So working in a district office, I know a lot of pastors get that, and their personnel at the churches get that really confused. So just
What
wanted
helps me, this is Julie, and what has helped me is that heading, information to assist in W-2 preparation. Housing allowance resolution has to do with your taxes. It has, you need to, that's something that clergy get. That's a benefit for clergy that you use when you're filing your taxes of how much money you have spent on housing for the year. The other, so we changed, it used to be called cash housing allowance and then housing allowance resolution. So a couple of years ago, we changed it to say cash housing amount, because using the word allowance in both is confusing as well. So if you just think, I just have to think about, okay, this is the amount they're using on their taxes. This doesn't have anything to do with compensation or benefits or anything like that. It's solely for their tax return. And to help you all with the W-2 preparation.
Okay, other questions before we look at how to print this all out and get approvals and that sort of thing? Did we get all of the ones in the chat? Okay. All right. So again, we've kind of walked you through what a lot of the steps are here. If you've got to split up payments between churches in a charge or between the conference and the church, that will be the next screen if you need it. Otherwise, this is a single point charge. So you have to do this final step to produce the report, get the approvals from everybody in the church that needs to sign off on it, the PPR chair and the treasurer. If the treasurer is doing the form, they've got to make sure the PPR chair and the clergy person have looked at it and everyone's in agreement. And so before you click all these things to say that's been done, let's just hit save and see if it can, oh, good, okay. So when we go back out to the compensation, not this screen. When you go back to, make sure it's taking me to the right place again. I think I need to log out of this fake person. It's causing me some problems here. Okay. Please hold. Ah, yeah, that's the problem. Okay. Oh, one thing I didn't mention either, I do need to mention for sure. Those of you that are familiar with some of our online forms, you really do need to use the Chrome browser. You're going to run into weird problems and issues with how this form works if you're in some other type of browser. The Google Chrome browser is the best one to use to make sure that the calculations of the form are working correctly. All right, let me go back to this screen here. There we go. So the next thing you'll see after you hit save on the form is these options, okay? You're going, as the instructions at the bottom of the page indicated, you want to look at the report. Since this is a single point charge, you don't have any splits to do. You're just going to go to the report. Be sure you choose the July compensation season. And then it's producing all of that information for you on a printable or downloadable form. You can download it as a PDF and email it to your PPR chair, clergy person, or whatever. And it's split up the information. If you have separate churches in a charge, it'll split it up. You'll see that a little bit later. But this has compiled all the information that was put into the form. You can see down here where we've got the approval areas. It says no right now. So however you all decide to do this, I know the treasurer needs to keep a printed copy on file. So you might just have each of those persons sign this copy once you print it out. And then you can go back and change these to yeses on the electronic page, okay? But I'll show you that when you hit print here, you automatically have that option to save it as a PDF or to send it to your printer, okay? So that's where you'll be getting the approval on the actual report. And then once you have that, everything has been approved, go back into edit your form to the bottom of the page and say that everyone has approved it officially. Hit save. And then you can be done and submit for approval on the single point charge. If there's no errors, you'll see a red box that'll tell you if there's any kind of error, anything that doesn't make sense or doesn't work right. That error message we were getting earlier was because the minimum salary wasn't actually correct. You might have seen where I went back up and made sure it was within the range of a full-time status. And then it allowed us to save it without any errors. But you'll put your name and date and any other notations about the compensation record that you maybe forgot to put somewhere else and hit approve. And then we're able to, at the district and conference level, we're able to pull up then and see which compensation forms have been finalized from your end. And then we can review them and let you know if we've got questions or whatever needs to happen next. Okay. So that's the single point charge process for entering the compensation records. Okay. We're going to look at multi-point charges. I know we may lose some of the single point church people here if you need to step out now. Otherwise, hang with us. You never know, your charge might change and then you'll have multiple churches in your charge. We don't know what all those charge changes are yet for this year. But we'll look at another one here that I've started on a charge scenario. Other questions before we do that? Good to go? Okay. All right, so then we're looking at a new arrangement here with a full-time local pastor, Three Rivers District, and a 2-point charge. And I'll show you about adding, since we're doing something that's going to require managing the splits on that last screen, I'm going to go ahead and add a sustentation amount here too, which means I need to include Z Holston Conference compensation from the selection dropdown. So you guys can see how that works. Okay. So I've just put some random numbers in here, just like we did on the other form. Okay. And then this applies to, since I added the Z Holston Comp option at the top, then this is a yes. And we'll go ahead and put a sustentation amount here, maybe some amount. Then that will be included.
Hey, Donna,
Huh?
will putting commas and dollar signs or anything cause an issue when people are keying this in?
I don't think so, because you can see that the total fields have those, but let's go ahead and try that. It's one less keystroke is needed. You don't have to put any of that in here or dollar signs. Yeah, it's allowing it at this point, so that's good. All right, again, it's all doing the math for us here. These are amounts that we need to be able to track in salary reporting, that sort of thing, with and without reimbursables. So on this one, we'll say doesn't live in the parsonage and gets a housing allowance amount. All right, everything's totaling up to full-time. Put some insurance options in here. And again, just so you can see how this these amounts, they will change when we hit save. The personal share amount has changed here. So all the same stuff, right? Okay, so here we are again. This is a multi-point charge scenario. We'll hit save because, as the instructions say, we have to manage the splits now between Adams Chapel, Hulls Chapel, and Holston Conference supplemental salary amounts. So we go to manage the splits. We've tried to put as much instruction as we could on this page because the splits can be a little bit, they're going to take a little bit of getting used to. But again, the nice thing is the system does a lot of the math for you, okay? So for instance, if you don't put the total amount on what that total comp value is from the cash salary total, it's going to give you the red box, okay? So in other words, this number over here is always going to have to match this number And you're gonna get the red errors if it doesn't, so. If the lead church on the charge is taking care of all of the payments, you know, and the pension payment, benefits and all that kind of thing, you'll have that. But if the churches need to split this up between them, they can do this here by putting the different amounts. Okay,
This is Julie. May I insert something here?
Sure. Mhm.
So one of the things, sometimes the churches will put the split on the bill on the PSW, but they are actually paying the lead church. They don't want me to split the billing. They don't want a bill to go to each of the 4 churches, but they want to see what each church's share is. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Good point.
I guess, I don't know if we need another, because I understand that. Yeah, sometimes I do have a piece of paper that I send out to churches that indicate they want to split the billing. But see, this says churches share, not necessarily split billing. So
Well, that's what this screen is about, though. It's about splitting the dollar amounts that each of these entities is responsible for.
what
So
does that-
if you do, and yeah, the simplest approach is always going to be a lead church paying for the charge, right? And so that means that this amount can stay in this column. By the way, I need to point this out. If you have a charge, maybe this charge is Hull's Chapel, Adams Chapel, meaning Hull's is the lead church. These church names are always going to be alphabetical across the top. So keep that in mind. In the past, we've always had the lead church in the first column. So I just wanted to be sure to point that out, that these are listed alphabetically. So be sure you're putting the dollar amounts in the right column.
So to clarify, you said if everybody's paying the lead church, they need to put the full amount in they only split it out if they want me to split the billing.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can probably, I can add that also to the instructions in that area of the form itself to say, if your lead church is going to pay everything, but the other churches are just contributing portions of that, you know, then don't bother to split it on the next screen or something like that. But
Okay.
again, like I said, this page is one it'll take a little bit more getting used to. That's why we've tried to put as much instruction here as we can.
I have a question. So does that go for, I mean, salary and accountable reimbursements as well? Because I have 3 churches and they all pay the lead church, and the lead church pays everything. But it still needs to be split out.
Yeah, normally the salary, so, you know, we had that extra little line in there under the direct billing part that said that the direct billing needed to be split. So, you know, if this is simulating the pastor support worksheet, everything else, salaries could all still be in their separate columns.
Okay.
But the direct billing part would not necessarily always be in the separate columns.
Right, but you do have that option to split the reimbursables if you want to. But again, that could be an agreement, just depending on whether you have a lead church paying for everything. Again, you don't have to do it on this screen. But am I hearing that you would want to be able to do that between the churches in your charge, the reimbursables? Because
That would be helpful. I think on the last PSW we did, we weren't even able to split the direct bill. It just automatically went to the lead church, so we had to do that manually.
Now, there was a column in there where you could put percentages, or there was a line
Okay.
Maybe it didn't work. I don't know. There.
Maybe that was the time before too. I just remember at one point in time, like we couldn't change it.
We
Right,
only added, we only added it a couple years ago, I think, right,
Yeah,
Julie?
2022 is when, but there's a lot involved in splitting the billing. We can go
Mhm.
into that. And, you know, it has to do with who's running payroll, if they're splitting insurance. I mean, there's a lot. There's more paperwork to come if you want to split billing. Let's just say, put it that way.
Mhm.
I was just trying to think if it's what I need to look at to know if they want to split the billing or not, since we don't have a line that says that anymore, but in particular.
So I guess, so Adams Chapel's the lead church. They pay the pastor, they pay the direct bill, they pay UMPIP. And so we can split all these out except for the direct bill, the church's share of health insurance premiums. And that can just be an agreement that Hulse Chapel will pay $7,300 and whatever. Correct? To Adams Chapel. That makes sense.
So there's no official form that will read that way anymore for them to say, here's what we're doing. We have to provide that for them now.
You all can still use the worksheet however you need to. Of course, I mean, it can show you those breakouts similar to how this screen does. But yeah, if I understood the question correctly, if you have a lead church paying for everything, then make sure that you put all those amounts in that lead church column here so that Julie knows how you're wanting to bill.
The only two items that matters on the direct billing is the church's share of health insurance premium and the pension, the church's share of the pension total.
Mhm.
So that's what I bill. Okay, everything else, if you split it out, is the way it has always been on the pastor support worksheet. It's just that our other pastor support worksheet gave you the option to split the direct billing out. And what I could see, if I was a church treasurer, what I could see myself doing, if I was the church treasurer that was paying the lead church, I could see myself putting those amounts in here, right? But not necessarily wanting the bill to be split. I still want to see what I owe on the church, on the pastor's health insurance and the pastor's pension total. And I want that to be recorded, but I don't want a separate bill for that. So I'm just going to have to figure out a way to clarify that, I think.
Julie, I think there's a question appropriate for you down in the questions and answers. Can you see
Okay.
that?
I cannot.
Okay, it says we have a 3-point charge with 3 separate church treasurers plus a charge treasurer. Each of the 3 church treasurers send their payments to the charge treasurer who pays the bills. Do we still need to designate one church as the paying church?
Yes, I mean, the bill will default, by default, the bill goes to the lead church. Unless I'm notified otherwise that it needs to be split. So whatever the lead church is of that charge, as it is in Brick River, that's marked as the lead church in the billing system. And that's where the bill goes, unless I go in and do a lot of manual things to split it out. So by default, it's going to go to the lead church. It doesn't have to. The lead church used to always be column A on the pastor support worksheet. And that's not necessarily the case anymore, you know. Did that answer the question?
So basically, we should probably have the charge treasurer or lead church treasurer fill this out, but then we can use the PSW for each individual church to really figure out what is paid. Is that correct?
I think whatever, this is Julie, when it gets down to what happens on, your all's side, I don't ever fill these things out. I just use the information that comes from them, so
Right.
Bev is probably she sees more and fills more out and probably deals with more multi-point charges than some of the other conferences. You look confused, Beverly.
Okay, Beverly.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah,
I do agree with that, though. I think that just giving them a form is each one of them having a form will probably solve a lot of issues. And then whoever's keying it in, if they find that something doesn't match up because they did it wrong on their forms, then you can handle that before you submit everything. That's probably the best way of doing it.
And if you keep in mind, if you need to just get agreements from the other churches in the charge, we're only asking approval for PPR chair and treasurer, but you obviously need to get that from all those other ones too in the charge. So you could actually, notate however you need to on the paper copy that you're going to keep on file, and agree, and you all can agree on that way too, if it's, or, talk to your district or talk to me. We can probably find a way for you to make sense of it in here for us, even just in the notes area of the form, to explain, this is our intention of this church pays this and this church pays that.
Donna,
Mhm.
this is David. Back in the dark ages when I was a DS, those many years ago, we used to have one combined PSW. And then we had 3 separate ones, or 4, or in some cases 6, on the 6-point charge that showed who contributed what for their records. So there was no question between the churches who was to find that, even though we only turned in one pastor support worksheet as the whole charge.
Yeah.
And it worked better to have that information in front of everybody, so there was no question. It also helped at appointment time with the new district superintendent. There was a new one coming in to see who was doing what when they arrived, so they had no question about it. That made it simpler just because we had them separated out. And then the one major PSW for everybody to turn into the annual conference.
Right. And that's why we're still, we recognize that. That's why the pastor support worksheet still needs to be available. You all can, it's a tool to help you to do all these calculations. And so however you need to use it, it'll still be there for you. We'll have it updated every year with the changing percentages in terms of how much the benefit is and that kind of thing. So.
Well, I've got you. Let me ask one other question. The churches that I pastor are in 2 separate districts.
You can still do
So-
that in this form. Yeah, you don't have to do separate forms anymore.
I've been doing 2 separate. Is there a way at the beginning to show that there's 2 districts working in the
Yes.
same? Okay, that was the.
Yeah, you can
what did I
choose as many
advise?
districts as you need from that drop-down menu.
Perfect. Okay, I didn't see that. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Donna, there's one more question. So pastor is part-time, 2 churches, no benefits. In the past, there have been 2 PSWs and 2 W-2s, one from each church. Can we still continue to fill in 2 forms? So can the pastors go into their people portal and do 2 different forms, for one for each church, like a dual appointment would?
No, we have a single salary field or salary report now for each person. You can have those separate worksheets, and your district office will still have a place to upload those and attach them if you want to send those in as well. We can still attach those to this record in our database. But yeah, the salary record is one record for each person now. Not a salary record from each church.
But if they still want to do separate W-2s and separate paychecks, they just need to do 2 paper forms and do their process the way they did it. But their reporting to the conference is all together. Is that correct?
Yeah, because again, keep in mind, we added that W-2 preparation area just for your reference. It's not anything we, are verifying or need to have specifically, addressed. So it's just there for you to see the calculations if you want to just enter them in directly into the automated form or the PSW, either way. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, I left one field here just to kind of show you again. Oh, whoops, we've got to make sure that, so if the two churches want to, pay different amounts on the pension, then we need to make sure the math works. Otherwise, it's going to give us that error. And I'm going to throw another comma in there. All right. So, and as much as you want to see this information split out, feel free to use these fields for that. I'll make sure the reimbursables are showing on this screen as well. They're not right now. So you can split those out if you need to. So once you've done all that oh, I'm sorry, I missed something, I think here. It's probably gonna give me an error. Let's watch this. Watch what happens. Oops. Okay, it left the $10,000. I was wondering what it would do there. The sustentation amount, it should be here, but it's obvious that's coming from the conference.
And your cash housing amount. Has a zero.
Oh, yeah, there's some fields that aren't requiring it to be split out. If you don't need to split it, then that's okay.
But should the
But
total,
salaries, and yeah, the salary line is the most important one. That's always going to give us the error message. And then where were we? The pension amount.
and the cash,
Only
the
because
cash
I
housing,
left it intentionally wrong, so you
Okay.
can see it.
so the column on the right doesn't necessarily have everything, because like the cash housing amount isn't on the column on the right. And the box 1 of clergy there are some zeros over there.
Yeah, it's not requiring you to decide who's paying that. It's going to be assumed the lead church is if you
Okay.
don't apply it to one of those.
Okay.
Okay. And so again, we come back to once you've managed the splits, then you pull up that report, choose the July for this round. And you can see all the paying entities. And then if there are separate amounts, they're listed down here and what each entity is paying. So again, yeah, see, it's lumped those fields that we didn't split, it lumped them into that first column, that first church. All right. And then here's where you can get, again, print it out, get approvals on it from whoever you need to. And then you go back to edit the form. Confirm that you have approved everything. Gotten everyone's approval on it. Save it. And submit it. Oh.
Yeah.
There it
Yeah,
is.
see, those
Okay.
still said 0 over on the right.
Okay, yes.
And another thing, it will put, well, I guess it didn't, you said it put everything in column A, and I was gonna say column A may not be the lead church, remember?
Yes, sorry.
But we got
Sorry.
the error messages, so this is good. So let's go back and.
Right. So it's gonna want that amount in one of those columns. That's what this is telling you. Because there are splits happening. So my apologies on that one. So when we come back here again, and cash housing needs to be applied under one of those columns. And the lead church is handling the W-2. I suppose, Julie, and maybe this is a question for Knox. I don't know if this ends up being, if there ends up being a 10,000 over here for the conference. Is the conference doing a W-2 as well? When they're involved in payment?
The conference pays the church.
Ah, okay, good. So the church is doing the full W-2 then here. Okay.
We've
All
got-
right, we shouldn't have any error messages now when we go to submit. There we go. All right. It has been submitted. All right. More questions? Any questions?
There's some questions in the chat right now.
Okay. Is it about the dual point charge?
Let's see. It says, so Jan, Nicholson Engel said is cash housing still not showing? I think we fixed that with that error message. And then, Darlene asks, our two churches have always done separate W-2s. Should we now do only one?
That is up to you. And again, that's where, back to David's question, you may want to do separate worksheets just so you know what the amounts will be between the churches in the charge. Because we're only dealing with a total here. And once you've done that, actually what's nice, once you've done that on the worksheet, you could put it into this record as well as if you want to. But we don't really track the W-2 preparation fields, like I said. That's up to you all to decide how you want to keep track of those amounts. But if you put them into the split screen, then they'll be on that final sheet that you print out. Other questions?
Good morning. You're welcome. This is stressing me out more to find do Larry because it's talking about the different things I gotta do for two churches. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Is these libraries just going on everything about itself today. Last time I stood in the evening.
Is that I'm not sure if you just turned your microphone on or if you're asking a question. It's kind of hard to hear you. That Tracy? Well, I heard something about it sounding stressful, and I understand that every time, there's a saying, what is it? Progress is just the exchange of one nuisance for another. But it'll take everybody a little while to get used to this, and we recognize that. That's why we're trying to provide as much training as possible. We'll do more rounds of training before the fall charge conference, because that's when all the churches are going to have to fill this out. We just want everybody to be ready for July. If you have a new pastor coming in, you'll know how to do this form. And again, for some churches, the clergy person does it themselves and then gets all the approval. So for church staff, those of you that are doing this, please feel free to reach out to your district office or email me, and we'll get on a Zoom if we need to, and I can walk you through whatever your questions are. Whenever it's possible. So we'll be here for you. And if I need to involve Julie, I'll pass some questions on to her. And again, be looking for the videos. We're going to try to keep them as concise as we can to give you as much information as you need. And yeah, they're going to be linked up on that forms page I showed you earlier. There's going to be links within the actual automated form itself for you to jump to for extra instructions that you might be needing. And again, we'll keep updating those instructions based on the kinds of questions that we're getting. We recognize this is going to be new for a lot of people. Really simple and streamlined for the single point charges where the church is paying everything, but we understand that it's more complicated for the other multi-point charges. Any other questions? Oh, I know we have some conference staff folks on this training session too. And just so it's clear to you, this I don't think we didn't have this on the pastor support worksheet, but what you'll be doing here is choosing from this list. So like, let's see. Jan, you're at Radford, right? So you'd be adding that as well as your growth. You'd add both of these to your form, since you're one of those unique arrangements where you're serving a church and a conference staff position. So we have some of that stuff going on, but again, just so you know, we are trying to get all of the salary into one record for each person rather than having separate records. We can keep track of that, make sure everybody's at their minimum salary and in one form, and go from there. If we have questions, we'll let you know. And if you have questions, please let us know. Okay. Well, we're allowed for an hour and a half here, but I think we've been ending early for most of these. And so again, I'm going to be sending an email out that gives everybody that back to how to get into the people portal, how to sign up and get your, make sure we've got your correct email and all that business. So be looking for that. It's going to go to all the treasurers and PPR chairs and the clergy, just to be sure that if some of them may not have logged into the people portal yet, and they will need to get familiar with that.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yep. Okay,
Thanks, Donna.
we'll talk to you soon. Okay.